3, 2, 1, go!
Hey folks, Aaron here. Yes, another anime review. I know, 2 in 1 week. 2 in 1 week. I'm amazed myself. No, and don't worry, I didn't lose my other job, or it's not because I haven't been busy. I've been very busy, but the thing is that I figured I'd give you guys 2 reviews, so I'm actually doing both of them the same day. I'm doing this one a little later than I did the last one, which is Bunny Girl Senpai. Hopefully, if you want to, please check that out. It's on the channel. You can use some love, obviously, if you guys want to see these reviews. I had a lot of people on Twitter, clamoring to see the review. I was hoping to do a little better, but it's understandable. But today we're looking at a show that I honestly was just so happy when it released. It came by as a very big surprise when it was announced that Trigger was even doing it, called SSSS.Gridman. Now, here's the thing about SSSS.Gridman. I say it that way. I'm not going to keep calling it the quad S's because it's a little annoying. But Gridman is a series that actually is based off an older live-action TV show that came out in the 80s, roughly. It's very similar to other kaiju versus mech type of shows where you had like the main character dressed up in a giant, outfit that made him look like a special warrior, like Power Rangers, and he'd fight against kaiju, aka monsters as we know them. And it was a very simple show. I mean, the whole point was, the real name of the show was Hyper Agent Gridman. Hyper Agent Gridman, he was a guy who would go into the virtual world, take the form of Gridman, fight against giant kaiju, and save the virtual world, which also had a lot of connection to our world, because that's important. Now, this is not a spoiler, so don't worry about this, but I am going to explain something to many of you who have seen the ending of SSSS.Gridman and are very confused by it, because it's not anime. The last 15 seconds of the show is not anime. That's all I'm going to say right now. A lot of people are not understanding why that is, and because that's, if you never watched Hyper Agent Gridman or another show I'm about to talk to in 3 seconds, which is actually where the title, the Quad S's, comes from, is that if you've never seen that show, you're not going to understand the whole concept of why, the ending is the way it is, because that's really the true concept of the show, ironically enough. People don't understand that, but I will say this. Don't even have to watch the whole thing. Just watch a little bit of either the Americanized show, which is, like I said, I'm going to get to in a second, and or Hyper Agent Gridman. If you watch either one of those, even one episode, you will completely understand why it ends the way it does, and it will actually do some serious revelations on a lot of the characters in the show, a lot of the themes, why it makes so much sense, why this is so important, these battles that are going on, etc. But there was another show. Hyper Agent Gridman didn't do that great in Japan. It wasn't like Ultraman series. It wasn't like Power Rangers. It didn't last like multiple seasons or 50, 100,000 episodes. It lasted like 30 episodes, I think. Maybe even less than that. So it had a very short run, which is very strange for a lot of shows. But it wasn't, it wasn't unheard of. It just was strange for it. When it came to America, though, Saban, who's the publisher essentially of Gridman, realized they had a hit, at least more of a hit than they thought it was going to be, because Gridman in America lasted 50-something episodes, and had a lot more of success from toys and stuff like that than Japan did, ironically enough. When it came to America, it wasn't called Gridman, though. It was called Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad, which is 4 S's. Yeah, now Gridman's title, the Japanese one, makes sense, right? Because that's what actually they're doing in reference to it, is they're referencing the American show, because they know the American show was such a bigger hit and such a popular thing nonetheless, that it's kind of necessary to put onto the Gridman title, because for a lot of people, especially a lot of the viewers, they watched that show, especially in America. It was, Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad versus Gridman. Hyper Agent Gridman I only saw as of recently. And it's a good show, by the way. It's a very good show. I liked it a lot. It has a little bit more higher production value than the American version, and I like the music way better, because the opening song that's used in the very last episode, and I think used one other time in the show, is the show from Hyper Agent Gridman. It's the same opening. We don't see any of the Superhuman Samurai Syber Squad openings or music used, I think, in the series. I could be wrong about that, but to my knowledge, it didn't seem like it was used at all, which is a good thing, because I disdain a lot of the music that's used in that series. It's pretty bad. Even now, nostalgia does not save it for me. It's bad. Okay, aside from all that history, because it is very important to necessarily set that history up for a lot of people, because I know a lot of people have no idea where Gridman came from. Gridman in the story focuses on Yuta Hibiki, who is a young high schooler who has lost his memory for some reason, ends up reawakening a power that he didn't know inside of him via this machine called Junk, which is basically a old computer that exists in a pawn shop. And what he ends up seeing is a guy named Gridman within it, and Gridman tells him that he needs to be activated to reawaken his memories in order to save the world. And it's very important because that's the concept of Gridman needs to save the world. Now, Gridman from then on is summoned by Yuta, and various other people join him later on. They try to help him in terms of fighting. He has like the Gridman Alliance, which is friends that are just watching him from the sidelines, telling him, you could do this, try using this tactic, whatever. And that's also very similar to the TV show in America, but with the difference of the TV show in America had other characters go into the cyber world that were his friends also. Like some of his friends decided to pilot some of the weapons and armors and stuff you see in SSSS.Gridman, which is very interesting. I mean, that's a kind of a takeaway. Now, also, a lot of the names aren't used from the Hyper Agent series or even the Superhuman series. It's done that on purpose because I think they want to make sure that people who've never seen Gridman or have never seen Hyper Agent Gridman or SSS, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, if they've never seen that, they would at least be able to go into Gridman with a empty slate and still enjoy it. Because I know a lot of people personally who have seen the series and have no idea any of the backstory for it. And it's not like it's horrible for them. They still really love it. Trigger did a wonderful job animation-wise. The animation in SSS.Gridman is amazing. Just hands down amazing. The story is very good. It's very well executed. The characters are pretty good for the most part. I have some issues with some of the characters. I think some of them are a little bit too caricaturized. Like one of the things that worked so well about Hyper Agent and even SS, in America, was the fact that these characters were more, I think, just quirky and unique. And in SSSS.Gridman, they are very like, oh, you have the girl who doesn't, who has feelings for Yuta, but at the same time really just more of a kind of placeholder. And then you have his friend, quote unquote, that doesn't do very much and even realizes that he doesn't do much, but later on is able to kind of, show that he's the binding factor with them because he's the one who got their team together. In the original series versions, these characters had more of a role. They had, either they were pilots themselves or they were tactical advisors that did more than just sit there and, root for them. They were doing stuff. And so that's why it's very interesting to me that these characters existed like that, but they're not bad. They're not bad by any means. I don't want to say they're bad. They do their job. And even the villains and stuff like that are very well done. Some of the villains are a little changed from the original series. Obviously makes sense because they don't want to keep everything to the original, but they are changed slightly. But the concept is very similar. Where in both series you had one guy controlling, not controlling, but one guy creating the kaiju, and then the other guy, which was a program who's against everything, would summon that kaiju that he made, or in this case with the Kane being the SSS.Gridman's main villain. She would have her kaiju summoned by the villain, and that would be how the Gridman would have to fight that monster. It's not a confusing show. It's actually it's very simple. It's a very simple, here's the fight of the day, here's the fight of the week, get to it. It's nothing complicated. It's very point by point by point. And that works for the most part. I think I love that about Gridman because you don't have this unnecessary what's the word I'm looking for? You have unnecessary tidbits to it. It's not like Power Rangers where they throw in a whole bunch of things to you. They throw in all these different concepts or upgrades and stuff like that. Gridman, he has 3 upgrades in the whole show, and they're unleashed at you pretty damn fast, which I'm very happy about. He's got his one where his first armor gets attached to him, and then he gets the second version, and then you see the Xenon armor, which is a very popular thing from the old show, which I loved from Superhuman. I love the fact that they put Xenon in there because Xenon is essentially when Gridman's AFK, he can't do anything. He's out of commission. I said that. Well, yes, I said AFK because I didn't really mean to put that. Whatever works for it. When Gridman's out of commission, Xenon would come into force by having all the robots' parts that he had attached to one another and become their own, fighting armor, which was really cool. I when I first showed that in the series, I'm like, wait a second, Gridman's not needed? What? In America, by the way, he wasn't called Gridman, he was called Servo, which, yeah, I'm always kind of I loved Servo, I thought it's a cool name, but at the same time, Gridman just sounds so much more badass, like Gridman, Servo. Servo sounds like something from, if you guys know what a Mystery Science Theater is, sounds like that. It sounds like Servo. I think the robot's name is Servo, or something like close to it. So that's very interesting to me. But what I really love about Gridman, just in general, is that this is a show that's entertaining no matter what age you are, no matter how much nostalgia you have into it, no matter if you love Trigger or not. This is a show that just works on every level. It really does. It has some great action, it has some great animation, great music, decent story that keeps you going from pace to pace. It just does everything right. And again, this is going from multiple perspectives because I have nostalgia with this. You know, it's something where I know what Gridman is. I know the Hyper Agent series. I know more about the Superhuman Samurai Squad series. And I hate saying the whole name for that, but it's kind of the American name for it. But the thing is, like, all the references and stuff, like, either one, it's something that I gave Trigger a lot of credit for. They made it where any one of the fans, if you were a Hyper Agent fan or if you were a Superhuman Samurai fan, you knew them. And I'm like, how the hell did you guys do that? You did that really well done, Trigger. You know, my applause to you. Because honestly, it is so just intimidating to do a series based off of nostalgia purposes. Because then you have to appeal to the people that watched the original show. You have to appeal to the people that now have grown up. When that show was on, I was a kid, okay? I was young. And the thing is that, well, when Gridman came out, I was still not even born yet. When, Superhuman came out, I was about, like, a few years old, because even the main character actually plays Jack Hunter from Boy Meets World. That's just to show you how much of an age gap and time gap there is. He doesn't look the same in many ways. He sometimes doesn't really sound even look the same in comparison to how he plays the super cool version of the character in Boy Meets World. But it's something that nostalgia purposes, yes, it drove me home to the series that I haven't seen since I was a kid, and I'm actually starting to rewatch this because I want to. But more so than that, it does a good job of being its own entity. Where, okay, say if you forgot something, because I did forget, there's plenty of things I forgot from both series. You see that it's not necessary to know what that is. It just helps that if you do know, it throws a little nice reference thrown in there. Like, oh, look at this reference. Like the fact of the last episode. Again, not a spoiler, but it's something that does happen. Gridman's color changes. The cool thing about that is Gridman's color from episodes 1 to 13, or well, more so, yeah, 1 through 13, basically, are the same, not from the series, but from the new version of this. When it goes to episode 13, when you finally hit that, his color changes to revert to the original Hyper Agent Gridman and Superhuman series. So it's something that's like, oh my god, it's so much more badass, because you're like, oh, I can't believe they did that. For the people that watched it, because I wanted to see their reactions. I want to see genuine reactions when it happened. They were like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, look at, they're playing the old music. They have, this new design for them. That's badass. They lost the whole reference. The reference wasn't there, but it still had the impact that it was going for. That's why, here's the bottom line, folks. I definitely highly recommend checking out Gridman. Regardless if you're a fan of the series, if you're a fan of the original stuff, check it out. That's why if I had to rate Gridman from an A through F, I'm going to give it a solid A. Doesn't get an A+. It's not perfect. It's something that it misses a few things here and there. Like I said, the character's a little weak sometimes. And for the most part, it's definitely very nostalgia/reference driven for the people that are really caring about those little small tidbits. Like, again, the ending, if you have no idea the past of the Gridman series, or, the Hyper Agent Gridman series and the Superhuman series, you are just going to be completely lost. It's not going to make any sense to you. Like, oh, some people, I take that back to a certain degree. Some people understood it, but even the ones that understood it were still slightly wrong with it. Like, there are people like, oh, this is what that means. And I'm like, close. You're like 99% of the way there. You just missed that 1% that makes it where everything links up. Like, even Gridman's attacks at the very end are reminiscent of stuff from the original series, from both American and Japanese version, because it's important to know that. That's why Gridman exists, is to do something that is not like just destructive. He's not just a destructive fighting force. There's more to Gridman than that. But that's all I'll say, because if I go any further, I'll spoil things for the people who haven't seen it yet. Just know that, again, it's a really good series. I really enjoyed it a lot. I had a lot of fun watching it. Anyways, I will talk to you guys later. Have a great week, everyone. I won't see you probably until Sunday, most likely, only because I plan on doing another dual review for Sword Art. I know I'm always behind now every time with episodes. I apologize greatly for that, but it's unfortunately the reality of it. I just can't do episodic reviews all the time. It's something that, as much as I would love to, it has to probably wait till my days off if I can do it that way. We'll see about that. But even then, my days off are kind of precious, so doing reviews is tough. It's I'm usually going out and about. I'm trying to hang out with friends, trying to make up for lost time during my work week. So I do apologize. I appreciate a lot of you sticking with me, folks. There are an overwhelming amount of people that still watch my reviews. They don't do high views, I don't get that, but I still have at least 50 or 60 active viewers that constantly, comment on the videos, talk to me outside of YouTube because they don't really like posting stuff up to YouTube, obviously, which is fine. Listen, if you can't comment on YouTube, I understand that. It's a very public place to comment and be afraid that someone's gonna, assault you. I'll tell you right now, I am very active when it comes to that. If I see a really negative comment, I do delete them as much as I can. For the most part, I think I've done that with every video I've ever had. I try to get rid of ones that seem like they attack others or even attack my content, so don't worry about that if you ever want to post a comment into the description, or not description, the comments below. But if you ever feel like you can't use a YouTube as a public domain to talk, feel free to DM me on Twitter. I always leave them open, obviously. You can do that anytime you want. I always appreciate any comments you have or any constructive criticism you have toward me. And I will talk to you guys later. Beyond all that. As always, if you do like my content, think of subscribing. It helps me out. I'm trying to get to at least 2,000 to say at least I did get to 2,000. Be kind of cool. Check out my Patreon for various awards and details for those. I also like to tell people Patreon is used primarily to help other people versus myself. I use it to donate to other YouTubers and other cosplayers, etc. Anything in the medium. I've done it also with comics creators and stuff like that. See you guys later. God bless you all. Until I pass across again in the next review. Bye bye, everyone.